Hey Richmond, we are leveling up fast. Conveyor Belt Sushi is coming to Short Pump. Browns Island is going dark for a $30 million glow-up. Chesterfield is spending $54 million to finally unlock the Woolridge Road extension. And one of our region's biggest malls, it just got sold with mixed use written all over it. Also, in this episode of Real Richmond, we say, come on, bruh, to real estate developers who still seem shocked when we find history right underneath our feet. And then finally, we'll do a deep dive with answers to the 3 most common questions about selling your Greater Richmond home. I'm John Tiller. I'm a Greater Richmond, Virginia insider and a local realtor for over 25 years. And I want to welcome you to Real Richmond. The Richmond region is growing, it's evolving, it's building and creating, and the more you understand what's happening here, the more you'll love it like we do. Each week, we break down the stories shaping our region. We spotlight the people and the places that are making an impact. And we take deeper dives into the neighborhoods, businesses, and trends that impact how we live, work, and build here. If Greater Richmond is home for you, or if you're thinking about making it home, you're in the right place. This is Real Richmond. Let's get started with the Richmond Rundown. Well, we finally have an update on that conveyor belt craving. Cura Revolving Sushi Bar is officially taking over the 3,200 square foot former Persis Indian Grill spot at Short Pump Station. Expect this to open this fall with iconic touchscreens and the Bikara Pawn prize machines. I had to look this up. I didn't know what that was, but it's the game where you win prizes by depositing your empty plates. The only time that I've ever been to Conveyor Belt Sushi was on my last trip to Los Angeles, and I was hooked. So thank you, Cura, for bringing this luxury to Richmond. And hey, listen, if you're planning to walk off that sushi downtown, heads up, Browns Island, it's locked down, so you'll have to go somewhere else, at least for the summer. We're in the middle of a massive $30 million improvement plan on Browns Island. They're installing river terraces, play spaces for kids, and a living building center. The catch? The island is closed until October. That means no Friday cheers on the grass this summer. Everything's moving to temporary spots while the riverfront gets its world-class upgrade. It's a bummer now, but it's going to be a crown jewel by next fall. Speaking of living buildings, what exactly is that? Well, it's a building that acts like a tree. It creates its own energy and it captures its own water. If you want to see a living building on massive scale, you don't have to look any further than Louis Ginter Botanical Garden. If you went there for the Christmas lights like my family did and every other Richmonder did, you notice that they're in the midst of a $31 million expansion there, doubling the size of the conservatory and adding a permanent butterfly house. That's set to open in the spring of 2026. Now, while we're talking about living buildings, don't forget the $16 million Wilton Farm project in Verina. It's going to be the first public school building in the world to hit those living building standards when it opens later this year. So basically, Richmond is becoming the green building capital of the South. And I'm actually good with that, even if it does mean we have to find a new spot for Friday cheers this summer. Next up, Chesterfield officially is now home to one of the biggest construction sites on the East Coast. We're talking about the $1.5 billion, that's billion with a B, Lego manufacturing plant. Yeah, the ones you played with as a kid. It's at Meadowville Technology Park, and they just celebrated the topping out of the main packing building. This means the final steel beam is in place, and the skeleton of this massive 1.7 million square foot campus is now complete. But here's the best part for the local economy. Lego is not waiting for the ribbon cutting to start hiring. Lego already has 500 employees working at a temporary site nearby, and that number is going to swell to over 1,700 once the full 13-building campus opens in 2027. This isn't just a toy factory, it's a high-tech masterpiece featuring on-site solar farms and carbon-neutral goals. Richmond isn't just playing with bricks anymore, we're building a global manufacturing hub. If you live in Midlothian, have you ever gotten off 288 at Woolridge Road and thought, why is this an exit to nowhere? Well, here's why. When 288 was built over 20 years ago, I remember it opening, and Woolridge was supposed to connect through to Halsley, Summer Lake, and Old Hundred Road. But the county didn't want to fund it, and no single developer wanted to go first, footing the bill for a road that helped every other developer make more money on their projects. So what happened? It sat for 2 decades. Well, not anymore. The $54 million Woolridge Road extension is now officially underway. It includes a 1.25-mile connector with 4 lanes, a shared-use bike path, and a new roundabout at Old Hundred Road. Completion is expected by 2028. If you live in any of the sprawling communities in that area, traffic relief, well, it's finally on the way. Okay, so now the biggest mall in RVA, it just got a new boss. And the plans are, well, they're vague. Chesterfield Town Center was just sold for $80 million to a private equity group. They're calling the mall a strategic, important asset, and they're already talking about repositioning opportunities. In developer speak, that usually means one thing: mixed-use redevelopment. While the mall still draws nearly 6 million visitors a year, the new owners are hinting at adding residential units to those massive parking lots. With the mall being a local landmark since 1975, everyone's on edge wondering if Chesterfield Town Center becomes the next Regency Square redevelopment. We'll see. Now, it's time to wrap up the Richmond Rundown with my favorite segment. Come on, bruh. This one is a little serious, though. Listen, with our deep history, not all of it pretty, how are we still out here acting surprised when we find centuries of history right under our feet? Whether it's the 700 graves recently discovered in Manchester or the sacred ground in Chaco under the billboard pylon, the oops, we didn't know excuse, well, it's getting old. Listen, I'm pro-development. We need the housing. We need the infrastructure. But we can't just forget about the people who built this city, especially the ones who are buried in unmarked graves with no mention of their names. As Richmond development soars, Chaco Bottom all the way to Manchester, we're finding hundreds of unmarked graves and all over other parts of the city because honestly, the planners 100 years ago, well, they just didn't care. We can't keep using their mistakes as our blueprint. I'm not talking about stopping progress. I'm talking about moving our city forward with respect to those who didn't receive that respect in the past. We're smarter than this now. City Hall, you can update those site maps. Developers, you can run the ground radar imaging before you buy the land. And if the descendant community says there's a cemetery there, let's believe them. We don't need a backhoe to prove what our neighbors already know. It doesn't have to be either or. We can have both and high-speed rail and a memorial to the people who built this city with their labor, even if we're just now giving them their dignity. We can have both. It's called a site plan. Let's honor the past so we aren't literally building our future on top of it. We can do better, RVA. Come on, bruh. We can do better. All right, now for a more upbeat segment, let's talk about my favorite Luxe listing of the week. Are you looking for that perfect mix of country quiet and city chic? Well, we're obsessed with a to-be-built homestead on a 5-acre slice of heaven in Perkinsville Estates in Goochland. Our good friend Jess McLaughlin at Real Broker and his builders' Southern Traditions have outdone themselves on this one. It's going to be a custom masterpiece that feels less like a house and more like a private retreat. 4,300 square feet and 5 bedrooms of pure wow. What we love the most? It's the first floor primary suite. It's got these incredible rustic wood beams and a shower that's so big that you could actually get lost in it. Plus, the kitchen is a total showstopper. butcher block counters, shout louder in the back, custom cabinets, and sweet views of the countryside. You get all the privacy of the woods, but you're still only 15 minutes from Short Pump. Priced under $1.4 million, it's one of those have your cake and eat it too dream homes. Hey, but before we move on, a quick disclaimer that real estate moves fast. I share listings every week here on the Real Richmond pod, and this listing was available when we hit record, but it might be spoken for by the time you hit play. So don't come at me if you got to the listing too late, but feel free to message if you want to know if it's still available. So now for our final segment, the Richmond Deep Dive, where we go past the surface and get into what actually matters on questions with answers to those questions that people are asking. Today's topic, the top 3 questions that I get asked when you're selling your home. When should I sell? What do I need to do to prepare? And how much should I expect to get? Now, whether you're thinking about it now, 6 months from now, or you're just curious, this segment will be for you. We're breaking it all the way down. So, number 1, let's start with the big question, when is the best time to sell? In Richmond, the spring market always shows up between January 15th and March 15th, but we never know exactly when in advance. But we can always look back and say, yep, that was it. Well, in 2026, we're looking back and saying it was this past weekend in February. We went from normal, steady activity to something flat out aggressive. The kind of weekend where one of my buyers had to outmaneuver 6 competing offers just to win the house they wanted, and an as-is property that we were selling needing a full cosmetic overhaul, we sold for $100,000 over market value with 9 competing offers on that one. And what happened? It was a perfect storm this weekend that we haven't really seen since 2021. The snow has melted, the rates have dropped, and serious buyers are ready to move before the full wave of spring sellers hits after the flowers bloom and the yards green up and the trees bloom. So we went from normal, steady activity to something that, again, was flat out aggressive. So my buyers had to outmaneuver the rest of the market. The sellers got more money than they were expecting. And here's the part that most people miss. Everyone assumes that the best time to sell is the spring. But in Richmond, the real opportunity is often before the blooms. That's when buyer demand is surging and seller competition is still thin. When you list ahead of the crowd, you're not one of many, you're the one they have to fight over. All right, so question number 2 that I get every single week is, how do I prepare my home for sale? Do I need it to be in model home perfection, or can I just sell it as is? And here's the truth. You can sell a home in any condition. There's a buyer for everything at the right price. But if your goal is to squeeze every ounce of value out of what you've built, preparation matters, and it matters a lot. Because in this market, getting it beautiful matters more than getting it fast. Speed gets you listed, presentation gets you paid. Now, how do you prepare? This is where the real work happens, and I'm going to break it down into a few key areas. Number 1 is to choose your realtor partner early. You want to get them involved early, not the week before you list, but ASAP before you start preparing your home for sale. 2 or 3 months out, or even 6 months or a year ahead of time. Why is that? Well, it's because a good agent isn't just going to put a sign in the yard. In fact, if an agent meets you for the first time at your house and says, I want to go slam a sign in the yard, watch out. There's something wrong there. When the agent comes by, they're going to walk the home with you. They're going to bring in a good agent, will bring in a certified professional design consultant, and even a home inspector to help you prioritize what to improve and what not to improve to get you the most amount of money. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. The earlier that you bring in a great agent, the more runway you have to make smart decisions instead of rushed ones. Don't hire someone that just shows up with a lockbox. Hire someone who shows up with a strategy. So next up is staging. or at least a design consultation. And before you roll your eyes, though, hear me out. Staging to sell your home for the highest price is not about making your home necessarily look like it belongs in a magazine. And staging doesn't always mean bringing in furniture or getting rid of everything that you have. Sometimes it's as simple as removing some furniture, painting a room, and letting the space breathe. The best staging uses what you have to present your home in a way that buyers can see themselves living there. You see, 95% of buyers, they don't have vision. And the other 5% are called investors who are going to lowball you on the price, which we'll talk about in a moment, has its place, but may not be what you're looking for. This might mean staging, might mean rearranging or removing furniture. It probably means decluttering. It means making sure your home photographs well, because 90% plus of buyers are seeing your home on a screen before they ever step foot inside. First impression is the listing photos. If it doesn't pop online, they're not coming to see it. Gone are the days where buyers tour a dozen homes before making a decision, because buying is a process of elimination, and buyers are eliminating your home before they even come inside. Most buyers are making a decision on one of just a few homes that they actually physically walk inside, and we're seeing more offers on sight unseen homes than ever before. Also, you want to make sure that you're not staging just for photos, because buyers will be mad if you show them one thing online and they see something else when they get there. This is about presenting the home in its best possible condition and having professional photos and video to shine the best light on it. You don't always need to bring in furniture, but a great stager or designer will show you how to present the home in a way that attracts the maximum amount of buyers. Now, here's one other step that most sellers skip, and they pay for it later. Consider, if you're selling your home, getting a pre-listing inspection. Have an inspector come through before you list so you know what's there. This means no surprises and no buyer using a leaky faucet or an old water heater as leverage to renegotiate thousands of dollars on a sale that's hundreds of thousands of dollars total. When you know what's in your home, you get to decide how to handle it on your own terms, not under the pressure of a contract that's about to close. Also, it can save you money. You might be shocked at the wide range of pricing that I've seen that contractors will give for certain repairs, like a new roof or moisture in the crawl space, that are no big deal to one contractor, but are tens of thousands of dollars to another contractor. Taking care of these items beforehand, especially these, before you go on the market, it can really save you literally thousands of dollars versus having a contractor chosen by the buyer to do them just before closing. So once you get your pre-listing, staging, and inspection reports, every improvement you're considering falls into one of three buckets. Now, this is another thing that lots of agents and definitely a lot of sellers really don't understand. I get this question all the time. And so here are the buckets, and there's a fourth bucket too. But bucket number one is your must-dos. These are the health, safety, and structural concerns. If the roof is failing, the HVAC is dead, or there's an active water leak, you got to handle it. Buyers and lenders, they both require it, and they're not optional unless you're selling for an as-is discount. Now, bucket number two is the should-dos, the things you should do. These are the high return on investment cosmetic updates that actually move the needle. Fresh, neutral paint, updated light fixtures, refinished hardwood floors, curb appeal. These items, they don't cost a fortune, but they dramatically affect how buyers feel when they walk in, and how what they feel is what they remember. And it determines how much they're willing to pay. Now, bucket number three is what I call the hold it in your back pocket repairs. These are the smaller repairs that you may be able to negotiate for the buyer to accept in their current condition if you have competing offers. But if you do end up having to do them just prior to closing, they're not going to be difficult, and you know how much it will cost you. So then there's the final bucket, and that's just the don't do it bucket. Almost never should you do something that you don't get a dollar for dollar return at sale. You're better off pricing the home correctly and letting the buyer make it on their own. In other words, we don't want to spend $20,000 to get $10,000 back. Knowing which bucket that an item falls into is literally how you protect your money. All right, so along those lines, real quick, let's hit the do's and don'ts when you are getting ready to and actually selling your house. What to do? Price it at the highest price that buyers are currently willing to pay based on the market, plus a little more. Now, this is something that a lot of people miss in an increasing market. We want to go plus a little more, but we don't want to outprice the market that's ready, willing, and able to buy your home. In other words, miss the qualified buyers in the top market value for your home because we got too aggressive with the price. Your realtor should be able to tell you within 2 weeks of being on the market whether or not you're priced correctly. And if not, you must adjust the price by a minimum of 3 to 5% if you want to get the most money out of your home. And if your home sits on the market without selling, then buyers are going to ask a question. What's that question? What's wrong with it? And once that happens, you've committed the cardinal sin. And the only penance is selling for less than what your home would have been worth otherwise. If your home is marketed well, you should know within that 2 weeks whether you're priced correctly because the market speaks quickly. Now, this is the moment that if your home lingers, buyers stop asking that question. And once that narrative sits in, what's wrong with it? You've committed that cardinal sin, you've lost your negotiating power, and you're no longer the seller fielding strong offers. You're the seller explaining why it hasn't sold. And the only way to restore attention at that point is almost always the same. You sell for less than you should have in the first place. Okay, so let's go quickly through what not to do. Don't over-improve your home. We talked about that. Don't take low activity personally in the first week. Give the market some time to respond. There's lots of reasons why you have low showing activity to start with when you expected more. Could be a holiday week, could be weather, could be something happening in town that's got people, sometimes good weather or bad weather, could be affecting that. When you're showing your home, don't be home during showings. Let buyers explore freely. And please don't price it high just to see and then plan to drop it later. That strategy costs you money every single time. Price it at the highest price possible and let the market get it to everybody in the market who's qualified at that price. Okay, so now the last question, how much can I expect to get for my home? This is the last question that I get like every week. How much can I expect to get for my home? Because at the end of the day, that's what we care about, right? Now, the answer to this question, though, goes way beyond your Zestimate. It's actually one of the most commonly misunderstood subjects by both realtors and home sellers in Richmond. And here's the answer. When you decide to sell, you actually have 3 valuation paths in front of you, and each one serves a different need depending on your specific situation. Option number 1 is an instant cash offer. This is your iBuyer or investor offer. You get a number fast, you close fast, you skip most of the prep work. And the trade-off, though, is that you're typically leaving money on the table, sometimes 10 to 15% below market value. But for some sellers, inherited properties, job reloads, or folks who just don't want the hassle, this is absolutely the right move. Convenience has a price, and sometimes it's worth paying. Now, option 2 is an as-is listing. This is different from the instant cash offer. You're still going on the open market, but you're being transparent that this home is priced for its current condition. There's no repairs, there's no credit, there's no negotiating after inspections. Buyers know what they're getting. You know what you're getting. This works great for sellers who just don't have the bandwidth or the resources to prepare the home for top dollar. A skilled agent can price an as-is listing in a way that still generates competition. They also should be able to find you an iBuyer if you go in option 1. Now, option 3 is full market value. This is where most people end up, but it's definitely not the only option. This is the full preparation path. You bring in your agent early, you stage, you inspect, you make the right improvements, you price it strategically, and you go to market ready to compete. This is how you maximize your return. It takes more time and more energy, but for most sellers in Greater Richmond with the runway to do it right, this is where the money is. So which path is right for you? That depends on your timeline. It depends on your goals and on your property. But now you know the options, and knowing those options is leverage. If you got questions about selling your home in Greater Richmond, hit me up. The link is in the description. Okay, well that's it for this week's Real Richmond Show. I'm your host, John Tiller, and I'm the #1 realtor in Greater Richmond, according to my mom. Thanks for staying all the way to the end. Drop me a comment and let me know what you think. I read them all, and I even respond to the nice ones. Remember, sharing is caring, so it would mean the world to me if you share this episode so that more locals can stay in the loop. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again next week.